Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a very special Dave's Faves dedicated to my mom, whose favorite piece of music in the whole world, probably, is Brahms' Symphony No. 1. And who can blame her? What a magnificent work it is. But that means I've been listening to this sucker since I could barely teeth. I mean, really, since I was like teeny tiny. I probably heard it in the womb, although I don't remember it terribly well from that particular location. It was kind of muffled, I'm sure. But what a great work this is. And it's been recorded 30 trillion billion times by 30 trillion billion different conductors. And how in God's name do you pick a best one? Well, that's one of the reasons I haven't done a Brahms 1 repertoire talk yet. I will probably get to it. But even if I trim it down to like the top 24 of them, there are at least another 24 that you'll all toss in and say, I love that one. And you'd be right, because it's probably marvelous. And so then what's the point? You know, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, as was the case with the talk I just did on the late Mozart symphonies, you just have to pick one and be happy, because they're marvelous. Maybe you can pick a dozen and be happy, because they're all marvelous. But broadly speaking, there are two approaches to this symphony. The traditional German one, which I happen to love, which treats it as a heavy-duty, serious, granitic, volcanic, totally Sturm und Drangy romantic excrescence. Just a wonderful, wonderful piece of music. Then there is the more modern, streamlined point of view. Even before we got to the period instrument people, those jabronis, there was this approach, which was lighter and leaner, and with the first movement introduction, a little bit less imposing and more closely welded to the main tempo of the allegro, in keeping with Brahms' poco sostenuto marking, which frankly I don't think we should take too seriously, because Brahms said poco everything. I mean, poco was like his favorite word, and I don't think we need to care about it at all. But beyond that, there is a certain lighter approach, and it can be marvelous. The great exemplar of that approach in our day, I believe, was Günter Wand, who did it that way and really shocked some people with the rapidity of that introduction. But actually, the interesting thing is that with most conductors, unless they're completely insane, like, Celibidache or one of those people, after that introduction and the first movement, the rest of the symphony tends to be pretty consistent with both approaches, because the scoring is much lighter, and, until you get to the finale, where, of course, you can, take that brooding introduction, either more brooding or less brooding. And once it gets going with that main theme, you don't have a lot of choice tempo-wise. I mean, it always sort of goes da 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 dum, ya da 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 dum. For some reason, you never hear it done da 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 da, for obvious reasons. Nor do you hear it done do 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 ba do 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 do, for obvious reasons. It kind of plays itself. I mean, once the allegro middle business gets going, you can futz around with it a little bit more. But really, all of the difference happens in that introduction and in the first movement. And it's really kind of amazing the way the handling of the introduction characterizes the whole performance. After that, we almost forget about what else is going on there, in spite of the fact that there is so much gorgeous music to come. So I have a performance that is my preferred version. It is Dave's fave. It's the one I listen to when I have to take out a Brahms one, and it's this one. It is Giulini with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, because he only did 1 and 2 in Los Angeles, and it's 1,000 pities he didn't do the whole cycle, because after he left LA, he went and did the whole cycle with the Vienna Philharmonic, and it wasn't a patch on these two performances. These were really, really special. This is one of those, we're taking nothing for granted. We're going to prepare everything. We're going to play like gods and just go to town on it. And that's what they do. I mean, it even makes like Klemperer sound a little bit small scale. I mean, that's how powerful and just big and grand Giulini's vision is in this performance. It's absolutely stunning. And the orchestral playing is gorgeous. Gorgeous. The balances, the strings are so rich, but the woodwinds are always transparent, and the recorded sound is fabulous. It's all so much better than what happened in Vienna. It's really a shock if you make like an A-B comparison. And he takes the exposition repeat in the first movement, if you care, which he didn't do later. And it just seems to be a performance where everything went right, and the remake seems to be a performance where everyone was just sort of doing their thing. It was kind of routine. But this. And there are so many great Brahms ones. I mean, you know, like I said, there are all the ones I mentioned, and there's Levine's 2 cycles, and there's Dochnani, and there's just, it's endless, you know, how many wonderful performances there are. But this one, I think, is special, at least it is to me. And when I want to hear Brahms 1, I go for this performance because I think it just gives me the most majestic, powerful, complete Brahms 1 experience. It has such fullness and such a tremendous unity of vision and intensity. And, what can I say? It's just amazing. So keep on listening, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.